Hi guys. Very quick intro. So my name is Markus Erken. I'm a founding partner at Sunfish Partners. We're an early stage VC that invests in Polish deep tech teams, and I'm very happy today to share some thoughts with you guys on key success factors during times of COVID-19 for your startups. Let's go. You never let a serious crisis go to waste. This right now is really a special time for all of us in the world. I mean, literally 7.8 billion people in the world are affected by COVID-19 in one way or another. So I think the most important key success for right now is the right attitude. If you as a founder can act quickly, if you can act creatively, if you show the persistence, you really might be able to come out on top of this. There's a couple of things I want to dive into right now. First thing is a tough one, layoffs, right? I mean, layoffs suck. They're not fun. They're not fun for anyone. Obviously not for the person who's getting laid off, but they're also really tough for you or your co-founders who have to make these calls and have to communicate them appropriately. One very interesting piece of advice I heard on this by Bill Gurley, a great VC, said, don't make 5 to 10% cut-ups. If you have to, they're just not worth all the cultural pain that goes with them. Because they're not going to give you a lot more runway for your startup. And sooner or later, you might be making the next 5% layoff and the next and so forth. So you really risk a death by 1,000 cuts. So if you must make layoffs, then make one bigger move, try to be transparent about it, but make sure you have runway for a month to go after this so that you can give a sense of security to the employees that are remaining with the company. On the upside, there's quite a few companies right now who are benefiting from this current situation. So it's a great time to be hiring if you are. There's a lot of talent on the market. And also think about interns. A lot of companies are currently canceling their summer internship programs. So if you're in need for good people, now's one time to get them. Another topic, there's a saying in the Army, either lead, follow, or get out of the way, right? I mean, right now, the world is looking for leadership, and your employees are. They're really anxious right now. I mean, so are your customers, your co-founders, and so forth. So you really want to step up your game right now. You want to be present. You want to be proactive, and you just don't just want to communicate. You want to over-communicate. Right? Make sure that you talk to people. One example, your employees right here. I mean, working from home, not just home office for a day, but working from home for a month, that's a stretch that's very difficult and causes a lot of anxiety for a lot of your people. And you have to think how to create new routines to pick up on how your employees are feeling, right? Normally when you're at the office, you can just walk by their desk or chat with them over lunch. And you can pick up easily on people if they're having a bad day, a bad week, if their motivation is going down, what to do about it. And that's all a lot more tricky if you only have group calls and so forth. So I can encourage you to like call up your people individually. It only has to be a couple of minutes, chat with them, personal stuff, company stuff. See how they're handling the current situation, how you can help and be super approachable and proactive to make it easy to reach out to you. Same another example goes for your customers. Don't wait until some customers don't pay their bills, right? Like call them up proactively, see if they're going to be able to make it or not. If not, try to figure out creative ways like extensions. And if they ask for an extension, try to understand why they need that. What's getting more difficult or maybe easier for their core business right now. I mean, this is, if played well, a really good opportunity to learn about your customers right now and take a lot away with this. Let's jump to the current fundraising landscape and what you can do about it. It's a whole different world out there than it was only a couple weeks ago. VCs focus more on existing portfolio companies. The surveys I'm showing you right now that were done with European VCs this month, so it's very up-to-date data. Obviously, no survey is perfect, so don't read too much into it. But in general, VCs have two ways of spending their money on their existing portfolio companies and to allocate it to new startups who then become existing portfolio companies. But right now, every VC is anxious and is reserving more capital for, or most of them are, I should say, for their existing companies, because they are afraid that it might be harder for them to get external money in the next funding round. So this leads to outlooks that VCs think they're going to make fewer investments this year, right? So there's going to be more pressure if you're trying to raise around soon. And this also has the consequence that valuations are likely to go down. Again, on the left-hand side, we have the survey of European VCs, and the number that was most frequently mentioned is sort of like valuations going down by 10 to 30%. On the right-hand side, there's another survey also conducted this month. 114 VCs, primarily US-based. They also think 30% decrease is the number that's most likely. Again, the answer is nobody knows, but the majority of VCs are expecting valuations to go down. What can you do in this difficult times of fundraising? One thing is researching who's still open for business, right? I mean, some VCs have strategies, others have not. In general, the later stage a VC is, the more, the closer they are to the overall capital market, and the more likely they are to be affected. Right now, when it comes to valuation, when it comes to rounds and so forth. Here's one list. Again, no list is perfect, and this list is just a work in progress, but it's a list of European investors that are currently still open for business, and there's a couple of questions in there to check them up on this. So they have to say what channels they're using, when was the last investment they made, and so forth. So it might be a helpful starting point for you guys to really do your research. One tip, I mean, that's always true, but I think it's very, very true right now, is most VCs, and that's the first rule of VC engagement that I'll get to in a sec, but most VCs get a lot more pitches than they can invest in, right? I mean, take the example of us at Sunfish. We see probably more than 500 pitch decks per year. We end up investing in 4 to 5. That's a percent or less, right? So the teams that do get through the funnel, like they do have to stand out, and standing out is by really doing your research up front. See if this investor is a fit, right geography, right size, and could they be a good fit for you, right? Try to get a warm intro to them, try to learn about them, and then very specifically contact them. So the rule here is the results you'll get out of any given communication are directly proportional to the amount of energy you put into it. And in easy words, this means one personalized email is better than 10 generic emails. It's actually better than 100 or 1,000 generic emails. So don't make the mistake of thinking you can just go through the internet, create a list of 100 or 1,000 VC and send out a very generic random email. And just because you have a large number, that's going to lead to success. So really do deep dives and focus on a couple ones that might be a great fit and address them personally. I think that's a much better strategy. I'll make sure to upload this presentation on my LinkedIn and my Twitter. This way, you'll be able to easily click on all the links if you want to dive a little deeper into the different topics. I have a couple more additional resources I'm going to share on the next slides that might be helpful for you guys. One is some general guidance in how to pick a VC. And one thing that's very important here is like don't be afraid to ask tough questions, right? You're about to enter a long relationship, right? I mean, we see startup relationship that's going to be a 5, a 7, a 10-year relationship, right? It's almost like a marriage in many ways. There's going to be a lot of pressure, so you want to be asking tough questions. And one thing I've highlighted here is you want to understand how the fund works, right? Like the duration, how long is the fund set up, and where's the VC right now, because that has implications for you as well, right? Most funds are 8 to 10 years, sort of like if they're in the first couple of years, there's a lot more time to go. Whereas if they're in the last year, right, then they have off the investment period, which normally have the fund duration, then they have a lot more pressure to exit sooner, right? It gets more complicated because there's follow-on funds and so forth, but you do want to understand this. Reserves for follow-ons, I mean, that's important for you as a startup. I mean, we see it right now. It definitely makes a difference if your VC that invests in you also has follow-ons for the next rounds for signal reasons, but also to be there for you in tough times. And also don't be afraid to ask them for changes regarding COVID-19. The other, if there are any, the other points you can just go through later by yourself. I've linked on the bottom here to a video on YouTube and a Medium post that I gave on VCs in general. I think it's important for you and a real advantage as a founder if you have a better understanding of VCs, because the playing field isn't really all that level, because founders only raise so often, whereas for the VC, that's their core business, what they do on a daily basis. So the better you as a founder understand investors, the interests, motivation, structures, and pain points, the more informed decisions you can possibly make. So worth checking out. And finally, Andreessen Horowitz has put together some good resources for managing through a crisis. So you can just check out, there's different topics depending on where you want to do a deep dive, from layoffs to how to manage a remote workforce. Well, it's a challenging time. We're fighting a war on many ends, and one of those fronts certainly is paramount. That's health. So before we dive into the Q&A, I just want to leave you with Schopenhauer. Health is not everything, but without health, everything is nothing. So guys, whatever you do, stay healthy and try to help your friends, family, and employees stay healthy as well.
Thank you so much, Marcus. And what do you think? How should the current communication of startups should change? The communication with investors should change in the new normal. Now we see that startups should inform very fast and frequently with the changes and the effects of different crises and pandemic. What do you think about that communication with startups and investors?
I think be proactive and be transparent. I mean, it's no secret to any investor that currently it's a challenging time, that things might not going according to plan, that former budgets might not be working out, clients might be breaking away. I mean, I think this is not going to be news to them. I think the more transparent you are, the more you discuss the problems you're having right now, they might be able to help you with these issues, because they see a lot of those issues over their portfolio of startups.
Right, and this year we are all isolated, but don't want to miss an opportunity to meet to each other with investors and startups, and to meet with each other virtually. While, for example, our conference is streaming online through YouTube, we're also thinking about organizing one-to-one networking session and mentoring session with startups and investors. And we're doing that online through our deal room. You may use ventureday.dealroomevents.com and to arrange your meetings with investors and startups. For that, please visit ventureday.dealroomevents.com and use your account or create your new account, browse startups, investors, and set up meetings. Marcus, one more question. Do you think that VC would go local and look for investors in the region than going outside the region?
I think it depends as well. So there is certain trends. I mean, the surveys I mentioned in my speech, in particular the American survey, they also had a question on outlooks. I mean, how likely are you to invest in foreign geographies and so forth? And there is certainly trends of some investors that think they might be less likely to do that. I mean, so I think, we've seen a trend of foreign investors coming more into Europe in the past couple of years. It's probably not the year where this trend is going to accelerate. So it might actually slow down a little bit. I think most investors will stay true to their core investment thesis. And if that thesis means investing in multiple geographies, that is probably going to stay true. But this year is not the year where investors will get adventurous and expand their thesis in that regard.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you as an investor, are you planning to change and switch on different other vertical or industry in the nearest future?
So we're staying core to our investment thesis. I mean, there's a lot of operational stuff that we're going through with the ventures, of course, that might have to be adapted for the current situation. But in general, we've been investing in liking very deep tech teams, and that hasn't changed. And I also don't think that it's a worse time right now for deep tech teams. I actually think right now, if you're a team that's very R&D driven, this might be a very good time to focus, to execute, and come out of this stronger than beforehand.
Thank you. And one more question. How do you see VC funding for the circular economy segment going forward?
I think, can you specify what you mean by circular economy?
Circular economy segment.
Just in general, in terms of sectors?
Yes.
I think the answer really is nobody knows what's going to happen, because again, this is a new situation. There's so many crises happening at once. But in general, like really good, outstanding companies in the end will find a way or figure out a way to get funding. And it probably sort of like is, and that's not just true for certain sectors, but in general, like right now is a time where when there's fewer deals being done, sort of like, it gets harder, but the top deals still find funding.
And probably the last question from our audience. Does it sound reasonable to postpone startup plans for more effective seeking investment or other opportunities or product launch for the next year?
I think it makes sense to critically evaluate sort of like your core product, core competencies and strategy and so forth. And I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. I mean, most startups don't have the luxury of postponing around if they're literally running out of money. And plus, we have no idea, is this situation going to be better in 2 months or worse? I doubt it's going to be different or a lot better in 2 months. So this might take a lot longer. It could potentially take months. This could take years for the market to get back to where we were a couple of weeks ago. So I think in general, like critically evaluating everything does make sense. And if then the better strategy is to propose funding or to focus on a different customer group that might have a higher need for you, that could be an option.